Hello everyone, my name is Patrick and I'd like to welcome you to the series I'm calling the Nostalgic Pack Cracking series, or the NPC series. This is going to be my first box of Lord of the Rings. I'm hoping to do many more, but I figured I would start with Fellowship set, the very first set of this game. This is not the first video in this series. I did one video last week, starting with the Star Trek card game by Decipher, and opened a Premier Edition booster box there. If you'd like to see that video, go right ahead. But this will be the first in the Lord of the Rings series. My hope is to open several booster boxes, maybe a few starters as well, and to complete a set live on this recording. This is mostly just done for my entertainment, and just because I like opening packs. Recording it gives me an excuse to do so. But if you enjoy it, please watch and follow along. Please comment as well. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'm going to be posting probably one of these openings per week, most likely on Monday or Tuesday. I'll get that nailed down in the near future. But here we go. So I began playing Lord of the Rings series when it was in beta. I lived about a 20-minute drive from the Decipher headquarters, so I knew quite a few of the developers at the time, and I used to go and play in Virginia Beach and Norfolk occasionally. Heavily involved in the tournament scene during the Fellowship block. And in my opinion, probably the very best initial launch of a card game that I've ever seen. The Fellowship set was just so well designed. So much fun. See, these cards are a little bent. The place I order from has this problem often. Hopefully it's just this box, but here we go. So these packs are laid out in a very familiar way. There's 3 uncommons first, followed by a rare, and then the rest are common. So very first pull would be the Black Blade. I enjoyed Nazgul quite a bit in Fellowship block. Was not my preferred faction. I actually played Sauron most. But Nazgul were quite nasty. I definitely enjoyed it. Starting out strong with quite a few Nazgul upgrades there. Yeah, I most enjoyed playing Shire with men and hobbits, and of course, I just mentioned Sauron orcs. Ford of Bruin, one of the prettiest foils, if you can find that in foil. Tale of Gilgalad, that's a nice pull. And we find our first foil of the set. Nothing amazing, but it's always good to have a foil. Such a aesthetically well-designed set too, just very nice to look at. And the inclusion of foils from the very first set in a very standardized way that they really kept through all of the sets, I believe, was a good touch. A lot of the older games like Star Trek and Star Wars, they had a very wide variety of distributions. Good to know what to expect going into these sets. The foils are always just exciting. Get some good elf cards too. And our second foil, Gondor's Vengeance. Again, not terribly exciting, but never bad to pull foil. Oh, there's a very nice one. Power according to his stature, one of the staples of the Hobbit gameplay. It looks like it's getting deeper into these packs. It looks like they're a little less bent, so I'm happy about that. The first few were a little bit too much, actually. This one's still have a line straight down the middle, but that's all right. Aragorn's Bow, nice pickup. Or that being one of the more valuable cards in the early stages of the game. Anything with archery, really, tended to be pretty high value. Legolas, definitely. Yeah, not one of the better of the Moria Orcs, the Troll's Keyword, but still useful in some builds. Yeah, I've got a story about the Troll's Keyword and Cave Troll that I'd like to tell sometime if we have some extra time at the end. For my very first Lord of the Rings tournament ever. Yeah. These Nazgul bring back some memories. Just good old fierce pressure. Nice rare foil there. Always nice to see a rare foil. And not a bad one either. Really the main thing I'd like to see from these packs is rare foils. Wouldn't mind seeing a foil Goblin Armory or maybe a Servant of the Secret Fire or something like that. These kinds of orcs were definitely my favorite to play. I love the direct damage effects, the exert to wound a character. I definitely abused those quite a bit along with the archery. That was my preferred playstyle back in Fellowship Block. Dwarf discard was a fun concept to build. Nobody tosses a dwarf. Opponent discards 3. I've tried so many times to make a good dwarven discard deck, along with somebody like the Orc Inquisitor. Opponent discards a random card. It would occasionally be effective, but it was never good. But just as a fun theme, I enjoyed trying, especially after Mines of Moria added a bunch of extra dwarven effects. Ranger Sword, always a good one. Moria Axe. Yeah, the Orc Possessions decks, definitely one of the scariest, but Moria Axe, not really a big part of it. Always more about overwhelming rather than having strong orcs. Burden decks were another one that I really loved trying to build, but it was just so hard to win by putting burdens on the ring bearer. At least in the Fellowship Block, it was always an option and always a threat, but it's hard to build an entire shadow deck around burdens. And then there's the pipes. Pipes were such a fun concept in the first few sets that never really went anywhere if you tried to build them in. There's just too much involved in trying to make it work. Move this over, have some more room. I'm doing a nice pull there. It's definitely one that I've played a lot. Any fellowship possessions are typically pretty good, or conditions. Pretty good pulls. Not a very exciting one there. I like that they added several versions of main characters so that they weren't all just rare. And in fact, some of the non-rare ones were some of the better ones. Elrond, such a good card. Just exert to draw cards. I mean, really doesn't get better than that. And sometimes Site 3 was dangerous. So having an ally at home 3 with 8 power or 8 strength is kind of a big deal sometimes, especially if you're going to be adding 4 to the Twilight total. They're a nice foil. Site foils are always some of my favorites. Gimli's Axe. Gimli didn't seem to see as much play as a lot of the other main characters, but he was definitely good. Certainly in a Gandalf possession focused deck. And Sting, definitely a good one. Sting kind of a not quite an auto include, but pretty close to an auto include in really every deck, because in Fellowship Block every deck has to have Frodo. So of course, having his weapon that removes Twilight is pretty good. Orbital Hunter, not one of my favorite of the Sauron orcs. They just don't do all that well with being strong. Not really the focus of that style of deck. But sometimes it's nice to just get a big minion in. And it's a good big hitter along with a burden style deck. Oh, and look, another rare foil, Orc Butchery. Not one I really played very much, but rare foil is a rare foil, and it's never something I'm going to complain about. Everyone's Pipe. I used to have a foil of this one, and I would say that's probably my favorite foil, just because of the way the foiling brings out the shine in the pipe. both of Moria a decent one as far as the dwarf cards go. The dwarf cards tended to not be used quite as much as the rest, and especially when before Mines of Moria came out. But if you were running Gimli, Wealth of Moria was actually pretty decent. Ancient Chieftain, another one of those kind of larger minions that didn't really fit with the style that Moria was trying to accomplish. Having one expensive guy on the field, not a big deal, but he can certainly overwhelm if you get a few orcs in play. And there's the Cave Troll, always a kind of a top end you're looking for to finish out a combat. And yeah, I'll tell you. So, quick story of a Cave Troll. The very first Lord of the Rings tournament I ever went to, it was called a Chase the Ring tournament. This was the release event that Decipher put on for the Fellowship set, and they were actually giving out as the prize for the event a 14 karat gold engraved One Ring, and I was pretty excited about that. This came out in 2001, which means I was still a teenager at the time, and so I picked up a couple of starter decks and maybe 10 packs, put together a Shire and Min deck, and threw in a bunch of Uruk-hai that I didn't know how to play at the time. And it was kind of intimidating. It was maybe 35 people in the tournament, but half of them were Decipher employees because it was in Norfolk. I lived pretty close to Norfolk at the time. So I was playing up against, people who designed the game, some of the beta playtesters, and whatnot. And because the prize was pretty great, there were also quite a few people who had traveled from out of state to play in the tournament, including one guy that had won a previous release event and already had won one of those rings. And to my surprise, in my first 4 matches, I was undefeated. And even though I barely knew how to play the game and barely had any cards, so I was riding high. But in my very last game, I was up against this guy who traveled from Texas. This was a guy who'd already won one of these rings. He played a lot of other card games and won a lot of other big prizes like this. And on my last turn, I moved to site 9. It was a 3-move turn, and I was about to win. I had enough to handle all of his minions, and because I didn't know how to play the game very well at the time, one thing I didn't realize, and I just overlooked it, stupid mistake on my part, I didn't realize Cave Troll was unique, and my opponent, in a very desperate attempt to not lose, decided he would play a second Cave Troll on Site 9. Now, over my shoulder was one of the designers of the game and the head judge of the tournament. And because of the way tournaments work, he wasn't allowed to say anything at the time, because I didn't say anything. If I had brought it up, of course, he would have been like, okay, he can't do that. But because I didn't say anything, he had to let it go. So I was overwhelmed in the fierce combat phase by the 2 Cave Trolls, and I lost, just barely. And after that game, and after the other guy won his prize, the head judge, one of the designers of the game, talked to me about it. And he was like, I wish you would have noticed that, because this guy didn't want this other guy to win, because he was just kind of this. He was not a fun player to play against, I'll tell you that. And nobody wanted him to win, and I was just a kid, and so they were kind of rooting for me. But yeah, so stupid mistakes like that, and definitely I regret that because I would have loved to have that ring. But anyway, and there's another nice pull, Witch King. One of the other big minions that actually is pretty great. If you can get that out with at least one other Nazgul, you're pretty much going to win. Gimli's Helm. It's been a pretty good box so far, but no Fellowship mains. Lots of good minions. A couple of good foils. Elrond and Sting are really nice. Glamdring's pretty good too. Well, as I say that, there's a Frodo. Not one of the better ones, but definitely a main. And I quite enjoyed the Hobbit ally deck. That's one I played quite a lot. Just playing all 4 hobbits, or yeah, all 4 hobbits, and lots of allies. It's kind of hard to stay alive sometimes, but it was lots of fun trying to avoid combat. We're coming towards the end here. 6 packs left to go. It's a fairly forgettable one. The Misadventures of Mr. Underhill. It seemed like, especially in this, just the Fellowship set itself, the Uruk-hai were just not as good. They weren't bad, but compared to what the other 3 Shadow factions can do, Uruk-hai just weren't quite on the same level. Mirror, very, very powerful card, the Mirror of Galadriel. Yeah, the ability to manipulate your opponent's hand in the Fellowship phase can be huge. You can just take out a few of their minion cards. Mary, another main, but again, not an amazing one. That was a pretty good version of Mary. Put a weapon on him, it's really hard for him to die. And no stranger to the Shadow foil. It's a pretty one. And a really powerful card that I played a lot. I loved the Aragorn Boromir combo with a couple of those on him. And a couple of hobbits. Probably the deck I played the most. Orc Warband, getting a lot of these more expensive minions that are not as great. Orc Warband's fine because it exerts to wound, which, as I mentioned, I love that style, but it's a bit more expensive, and usually just ends up dying because the Fellowship put some archery on it, and it's only got 2 vitality. So, and for our last pack, the Blade of Gondor, actually quite a good one. So lots of Fellowship possessions in this pack. We got, let's see, we got a Blade of Gondor, Glamdring, we got Gimli's Battle Axe, got Tale of Gil-galad, Gimli's Helm, we got Sting. So yeah, really quite a few there. I won't complain about that because they're always good. And then, of course, we have Witch King, got Cave Troll. What else did we get? As far as staples, might be about it. But, yeah, Power According to His Stature, definitely a good one. Elrond in the Mirror. Aragorn's Bow, yeah, I forgot about that. So quite happy with this box. No duplicates, which is always good. So we were well on our way to completing a set. And even got a couple of rare foils in the process. Definitely nice to see. Well, that does it for box number 1 in episode 1 of the Lord of the Rings NPC series. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to subscribe, I'll be putting out about one of these a week. It might not always be Lord of the Rings each week. I did Star Trek last week if you want to check that out. And I'll probably do Star Trek again next week. But I'll be pulling out another Lord of the Rings box here before too long. And I might mix it up as far as which sets. I'll definitely be opening a good amount of Fellowship, but yeah, I might throw some others in there as well. I've got a few Two Towers. I've got maybe some Mines of Moria. Probably some Shadows and some of the later sets as well, just for fun. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.